Hello everyone, I'm Sherry. Today I'm going to talk about closing the gap, literacy development in young Indigenous children. What is literacy? Literacy is involves in an integration of listening, speaking, reading, writing, and critical thinking. It is communication between people. It comprehends and understands ideas and thoughts. It provides opportunities to open the doors to education and employment, and provides all different kinds of choices in life. However, in Australia, some areas don't have the same opportunities to read and write. For example, like Northern Territory. Here is a snapshot of Australian Indigenous literacy. Between 40 and 60% of Indigenous children in very remote locations, like Western Australia, South Australia, and Northern Territory, are achieving below minimum standard in Year 3. Indigenous homes, particularly those in remote communities, have fewer books, computers, and other educational resources than non-Indigenous homes. All of these factors are linked to children's achievements at school and in the development of English literacy skills. The gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students emerged early. Non-Indigenous students far outperform Indigenous students in benchmark tests for reading, writing, and numeracy in Year 3 and Year 5. By Year 7, the gap has widened, particularly for numeracy. By the age of 15, more than one-third of Australia's Indigenous students do not have the adequate skills and knowledge in reading literacy to meet real-life challenges and may well be disadvantaged in their lives beyond school. Indigenous children living in isolated areas have even lower literacy rates. In the Northern Territory, only 1 in 5 children living in very remote Indigenous community can read at the accepted minimum standard. By Year 7, just 15% achieved this benchmark, 47 percentage points behind their urban Indigenous peers, and 74% less than non-Indigenous students. More than half of Indigenous families living in very remote communities speak an Indigenous language in their home. So how did the Australian government and educators support young Indigenous children education? Aboriginal Literacy Foundation. This program provides weekly one-to-one literacy tutoring to Indigenous children struggling to make literacy gains at school. They provided Indigenous literacy and heritage camps to fast-track literacy and numeracy learnings for significantly disadvantaged students. These programs are provided by a dedicated team of volunteers and paid tutors. Indigenous Literacy Foundation. The Indigenous Literacy Foundation was founded by Susie Wilson and set up by members of the Australian book industry in 2005, with the core aim of drawing upon skills and expertise of the Australian book industry to address literacy levels in remote Indigenous communities. The ILF aims to raise literacy levels and improve the lives and opportunities of Indigenous children living in remote and isolated regions. This is done through the delivery of books and literacy resources, publishing and visits out to remote communities. In addition, the Foundation advocates to raise community awareness of Indigenous literacy issues. Closing the Gap is a government paper from Australian Institute of Family Studies. The aim of this paper are to outline what we know about the size of the gap in early childhood development between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians and the social determinants of ECD. It's established why localized ECD is an effective means to close the gap in the early childhood years. It describes the conditions under which localized early childhood development is more likely to be successful and how to put them into practice. It also describes 3 broad strategies to promote physical, social, emotional, and language cognitive domains of the development and reduce developmental risk. Other effective strategies from researchers help support positive attitudes from families and communities during young Indigenous children get transition to school. Storytelling is also a foundation of literacy development for young Indigenous children. Community elders and family members scaffolding children's cultural knowledge and literacy studies. Government support strategies. First is increasing engagement and effectiveness of mainstream health and early learning programs, and also improving parent education and family support and addressing service fragmentation and gaps. As a pre-service teacher in Australia, it is important for us to know this country's multicultural context, and which also have benefits for us to enhance our learning and teaching skills in the future. Thanks for your watching and listening.